Buenos días, estimados colegas. Muy
Good
buenos días.
morning,
Bienvenidos
dear colleagues. Good morning,
a este webinar
friends.
titulado
Welcome to the
Causas
webinar
de deforestación en
addressing
Perú.
causes of deforestation in Guyana
Este
and
evento
Peru.
se da en el marco del cierre
This
del
event
proyecto
occurs in the
técnico-financiero
context of
desarrollado por
closing this project that was funded with the support of the Norwegian Agency
El
for
proyecto
Development,
inició en el
NORAD.
2016.
The project
Conservación
began in
Internacional
2016.
trabajó
Conservation
en el sector
International
minero en
worked
Guyana
in the
y en el
mining
sector
sector in
vitivinícola
Guyana
y
and
cacao en
in the
Perú.
sectors of coffee and cocoa in
Dirigió
Peru.
esfuerzos
The
en adoptar
project
mejores
worked
prácticas
in
para
adopting
prevenir la
best practices to
deforestación
reduce
y trabajó
deforestation
con
and
los
work
responsables políticos
with
para
those
garantizar
politically
que las
responsible
políticas
to ensure
públicas y ambientales
that
promuevan el
environmental
ciclo
and
de la
public
economía.
policies promote green growth.
Quiero recordar a la
I would
audiencia
like to
que pueden
remember the
escribir
audience that
durante
you
la
can
transmisión en el chat.
write your questions
Sabemos que
during the
algunas
transmission in
podrían
the chat
generar
box.
hándicap y
We
enviaríamos el
will be
documento con la respuesta
collecting all your
a sus
questions and we
usuarios
will send a document
independientemente
with
de
all
su horario.
the answers to the
Las
people that
personas no
registered
interrumpidas
previously
pueden hacerlo
using the
desde el
form.
link que se encuentra
Those
en el
who
chat
didn't
también.
can do it now using the link. I will put it in the chat right now.
Luego de esta introducción,
After
iniciamos
these
con
brief
el evento.
introductions, we will start with
Y
the
en primer
event.
lugar,
And
quiero
first,
dar pase y
I
dar la
would like
bienvenida
to welcome
a Luis Espinel,
Luis Espinel,
vicepresidente de Conservación
Vice President
Internacional
of
Perú,
Conservation
para que pueda darle la
International
palabra de
Peru,
bienvenida
so he can
a
provide
nuestro
with the
ponente.
welcoming words from CI Peru.
Adelante, Luis.
Go ahead, Luis.
Muchas gracias, Mirko.
Thank you very
Buenos
much,
días a
Mirko. Good
todos y
morning,
todas que nos
everybody.
acompañan el día de
Everybody
hoy
who is joining
en
us
el evento
today
de cierre del
in this
proyecto
closing
técnico de
event
causa de la
of
deforestación
for
en
this
Guyana y
project
Perú.
addressing causes of deforestation in
Agradecemos
Guyana and
el
Peru.
financiamiento de la
We
Agencia
want to thank
Norwegiana
the
para el
financing
Desarrollo
from
NORAD
the Norwegian
que ha hecho
Agency for
posible
Development,
la
NORAD,
implementación de este
that made
proyecto.
possible to implement this
Nos
project.
encontramos muy felices de
We
llegar
are
al momento
very glad
final de
of
contar
reaching
con
this
el
moment, and we
esfuerzo
also want to
de la
highlight the
cooperación
effort
interinstitucional que la
of this
entidad
interinstitutional
iniciativa
articulation that
a
this
diferentes
initiative
niveles
meant. It was
regionales,
articulation at different levels,
nacionales
regional, national,
y también
local,
a nivel
and
multisectorial
also
con el
at multi-sector
Ministerio
level
de Agri y
with
Medio
the
Ambiente y
Ministry of
así como la
Environment, the
participación
Ministry
activa
of
de todos los
Agriculture,
actores en San
the
Martín,
PCM, and the active participation of the different stakeholders in San
organizaciones
Martin,
se han
producers,
sumado
investors, NGOs,
para reducir la
that
deforestación
joined
en
efforts to
San
reduce
Martín
deforestation in
y
San
ha
Martin,
permitido el desarrollo
and
de
that had allowed to
iniciativas
develop public policies that are also
ciudadanas
innovative. We also want
vinculantes
to
a la ley
greet
del gobierno regional de San Martín
the important support
y
from the
varios
regional government of
nacionales
San Martin
que
and the
dialogó
provincial municipality of
durante la
Rioja,
implementación del proyecto se
who during
comprometieron
the
y se
implementation of this
comprometieron
project committed
que
and engaged
desafío de
in this
abordar
challenge
los
uh,
agentes de la
and by
deforestación.
addressing the
Así,
deforestation
gracias a
drivers.
la activa participación,
Also,
como
we want to
mencionaron
thank for the
algunas de
active
las comunidades
participation
nativas
of native
autóctonas,
communities, the
de
Awahon
sus
communities,
líderes
their
comunales,
leaders,
de las mujeres
the
organizadas
women that are
y de la
organized now,
FERIAM, su
and from the
organización
FERIAM, their organization.
Es para mí un gran gusto poder estar el día de
It
hoy
is a real pleasure to
y
be
mencionar
here
también
today and also mention
la
that
participación del sector privado,
been, we're
representado
glad
por
of having the
productores de
participation of the
café y
private sector
cacao
represented
y
by
sus
coffee and
organizaciones
cocoa producers and their
que han
organizations
participado de
who
manera
participated
ininterrumpida y
quite
obviamente
engaged in very actively.
finalmente y
Finally,
quisiera resaltar que
I
el
would like to
esfuerzo
highlight
de los
and
amigos
thank
de Guyana
our colleagues and
con los
friends of
cuales hemos
Guyana,
dado lecciones en el
with
proceso
whom we have
y
shared
aprendido mucho
lessons
de su
through this
ejemplo.
process and made us
Estamos
learn
muy
from all the
contentos en
challenges.
Conservación
We
Internacional
are very
por
glad
agradecer este
in
esfuerzo
Conservation
con mis
International
colegas de
of
Guyana
having this joint
y
effort
quisiéramos
with
que
our
el día
friends
de
of
hoy
Guyana.
sea
And we
un
would
día de
like that
celebración, un
today
día de
is a day of
celebración
celebration.
de,
Today,
esta
we need to
iniciativa
celebrate this
y
initiative.
agradezco a todos su
And I want to
participación
thank all of
y
you for
su
your
comprensión.
participation, and
Muchas
I
gracias.
welcome you. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Luis, por tus palabras.
Thank you very much, Luis, for
A
your words.
continuación, vamos a dar
And
la
now
bienvenida
we are
a Curtis
going
Bernal,
to welcome
director
Curtis
técnico
Bernal,
senior
in
de Conservación
technical
Internacional de Guyana,
director Senior Director for CI and Guyana. Go ahead, Curtis.
Buenos dias, everyone. Good morning. And thank you for the opportunity to say a few words here at this, I think, very important occasion. I join Lucho in his remarks in terms of the importance of this project. For us here in Guyana, this project has been extremely significant since it really got us started with a diverse group of stakeholders and partners really working to address the issue of deforestation from Guyana's gold mining sector, which is, at the time that we designed the project, the largest driver of deforestation. And it has been for some time now. But it's also a very important economic sector within the country. So we are very proud that through this project, we were able to initiate the Responsible Mining Initiative with the partnership of the private sector represented by the GGDMA, which is the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association. And you'll hear from Mr. Hilbert Shields a little bit later on, as well as the Guyana Women Miners Organization. We are very pleased and we thank the government agencies for their participation, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, and you'll hear from them a little bit later as well. The Environmental Protection Agency and the Ministry of Natural Resources were the government agencies that participated in the implementation of this project on the Guyana side. We also had civil society organizations represented by the National Two Shoals Council, and you will also hear from the National Two Shoals Council as well through the event. And through this sort of a coalition of private sector, government, and civil society, we are working to address the issue of deforestation as well as other impacts of mining on the environment in a manner that really also focuses on the economic importance of the sector to the country and the livelihood benefits that the sector delivers. It would be amiss of me if I do not also recognize the significance of the collaboration both between the countries of Guyana and Peru in the execution of the wider project. And the contribution of the funders, as Lucho did, NORAD. I think this kind of collaboration is really essential to find solutions to climate change and livelihood issues in the very important Amazon. And we look forward to further, as CI, to furthering even greater collaboration for the preservation of the Amazonian forest. Thank you, and do enjoy the event.
Muchas gracias, Curtis, por tus palabras.
Thank you
Ahora,
very much, Curtis, for your words. Now, to start knowing a bit more about this project, I would like to welcome Claudia Snyder, Senior Technical Director for CI Peru, who is going to provide us with a general overview of this project addressing the causes of deforestation in Guyana and Peru. Go ahead, Claudio. Thank you very much, Mirko. I cannot share my screen. I don't see the option. I don't know if anybody else can share the screen for me. Okay, I just did. Thank you very much. It is a privilege being able to share with you an overview of the project addressing the causes of deforestation in Guyana and Peru. The project is a project and that has a multi-geographical approach because we have it in Guyana and Peru and South American countries that have different cultures different problems, but that also share uh, uh, many of the challenges and realities that we all face in regards to development and also when it comes to combat climate change. The project was implemented in Guyana in 3 years specifically. In Peru, it was in the San Martin region locally. But a special characteristic from this project, as it was mentioned by Lucho and or Luis and Cortes, is that this project actually has a multi level sector. We worked in the local level with communities and small miners, small farmers. So we work with local governments, we work with national governments, and uh, and we also took this space of this dialogue to international conferences. Next slide, please. The general objective of this project was to work with stakeholders that were interested in reducing the loss of forest in Guyana and Peru, uh, and strengthen the green growth structures and face climate change. In the case of Guyana and in the case of Peru, with coffee on cocoa. Also to improve the use and the management of these resources among the communities and increase their capacity so that they could work participate successfully in the programs developed by the regional governments. Facilitate a green growth involving the private sector in adopting improved practices by providing alternatives that reduce the pressure in the forest and improve the livelihoods and well-being in Guyana and Peru, and also involve the state in order to encourage policies that allow reducing deforestation uh, in topics related to climate change and resource management. About the specific results, next please. In Guyana, we worked with effective red principles and grid growth, so that they integrated within the national policies and natural resource management, and with the miners and indigenous peoples applied measures to improve the management of their resources and reduce the loss of forest in Guyana. In Peru, we reinforced the participation of civil society and the indigenous peoples in San Martin in the Red Plus process, and we also worked with the San Martin government to adopt policies and measures and safeguards related to Red Plus and the reduction of deforestation. And internationally, we took the government experiences to climate change dialogue. So we took the concerns and the proposals from small producers to reduce deforestation so they could be incorporated in the international negotiations within the framework of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. I also would like to mention that one of the most important events while executing this project was the visit of the Vice Minister of Environment in Noruega. Now he is the Minister Environmental Matters in Noruega. And also the NITFIC research, they visited the project, they were able to see the different aspects that we were developing in the native communities and what we were working on with the small coffee and cocoa producers, the best practices, how to improve the quality of their product, and the proposals that the project had in San Martin. Oh, in this visit, the governor of San Martin was also present, and it was a privilege to us to show them directly how this project was being executed. In the project execution, we also had the opportunity of uh, assisting NORAD and to facilitate meetings between the different NORAD grantees and the Peruvian government. The idea was the grantees and the project support uh, the the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Environment Initiatives and NICFI. So you know, the Peruvian government has the will, along with the governments of Norway and Germany, to reduce reforestation. The idea is that we all join our efforts coordinately to achieve these objectives. Next. Another important event was definitely the visit of the Guyana visit to us. It was an honor to welcome them and have meetings with the different stakeholders in Lima and in the country in general, so we could show them the progress of this project in Peru, and of course, so receive from them their lessons and share their experience. I think the exchange between these two countries has made of this project a very valuable project, and I think that's something important to mention. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Claudia, for your explanation and for sharing the scope of this project. Now we will explain the results of this project country by country. We will begin with Peru, and then later we will know a bit more about the results in Guyana. In this sense, I would like to welcome Ivo Comendero, uh, manager of public-private partnerships for CI Peru, who was in charge of leading this project, and he will show us some of the results of this implementation. So, welcome, Ivo. Thank you very much, Mirko. Um, welcome to all the people who are following us online. It's my time to share the work that we did in this project in the San Martin region. My presentation uh, is uh, first in my presentation, I'm going to present the main results that we have grouped them strategically in 4 blocks. One about public policies and governance, another one on production deforestation production chain, another one for native communities, and finally deforestation. And then I will share with you the main conclusions. To see what was the scope of this project in the San Martin region. As you see, the San Martin region, it is in northeast Peru, and the project selected what we call the Alto Mayo landscape that is composed by the provinces of Rioja and Moyobamba, and that is located in the north of the San Martin region. In the Alto Mayo landscapes, we can find the Alto Mayo Protection Forest with 182,000 hectares that are under conservation. We also find the Aguajo Native Communities territory, around 142,000 hectares. And then we have the buffer zone and the production zones, all those inside this landscape. This landscape is also important due to its high value in regards to biodiversity, but also because it is one of the landscapes that has one of the highest deforestations. uh, capital in Alto Mayo is very valuable. We have more than 300 species of orchids, more than 400 species of birds, uh, an impressive habitat for endemic species, but we also identified uh, endangered species such as the tocón, the lechucita de botona, the yellow monkey. Also, Alto Mayo, particularly the protection forest, is a water source for more than 280,000 people and that are part of the Alto Mayo basin, and that it even supplies other landscapes in the region. Now we'll see the main results related to public policies and governance. And here I would like to highlight the work uh, that we did along with the government, the regional government of San Martin. I want to thank the openness of Roberto Bogadin, the governor of that region, to do this joint work, to engineer Daniel Vázquez Cenepo, manager for economic development, engineer Eduardo Cáceres, regional environmental authority, and many other stakeholders at government levels that created enable conditions to articulate the project activities to public activities. In that sense, and as a result of this, we were able to obtain new public policies that came to complement the work in order to fight deforestation in the San Martin region. Uh, some of the achievements were the public policy in regional order that refers to strategic guidelines to promote low emission economic development in San Martin, a policy that has allowed the regional government in the during the implementation process to generate governance which allows to make visible the importance of promoting zero deforestation within the production chain. Also, during this process, we supported another policy that has been formalized in the region, and it's forest zoning. We were able to have a directive to grant permissions and authorization for non-timber forest products, which is which is a unique policy at national levels and allows from the regional government to produce non-timber products such as medicinal plants. In this picture, you can see a product that is already in the market and that has been developed by the Awahon women, which are teas based on millennial native medicine plants that are used by the community, which is now shared among the people. We are in our way of approving a regional ordinance that prioritize the and values the participation of women in these initiatives. This project is in the hands of the regional government, and we hope that in the upcoming months is approved. We also supported the process of elaborating the climate change regional strategy for the San Martin region. About governance, the San Martin region has always characterized of being a region that promotes citizen participations, the participation of different stakeholders. In this sense, from the project, we strengthened different spaces together with the local and regional governments, where through social dialogue, we manage the development of this area. And we have been able to incorporate in many of these spaces and in the public agenda of these spaces the need of working to reduce deforestation among the main value chains, such as coffees, which is also a deforestation driver in this region. In that sense, we worked at national level and at regional level in the red roundtables. We assisted to strengthen the environmental commission in the San Martin region. We keep working together with the economic, with the technical table of coffee and cacao. We also worked with the regional technical committees. We have assisted to Rioja urban development. We assisted the regional government along with the presidency of the Council of Ministry to strengthen the regional agency for development. We have supported to strengthen the technical committee of uh, agricultural innovation, because we also understand that technical aspects are important to fight deforestation. And we also strengthen the regional Awajún Federation in Alto Mayo that represents the 14 Awajún communities. So they they build more capacity to deal with the stakeholders in the landscape. In the level of productive change, we have promoted zero deforestation approach. In this sense, the biggest impact are as follows. First, we have more than 1,200 families that participated in this project who have received support and have been benefited by working with coffee, cocoa, and other crops under the zero deforestation logics. More than 1,500 hectares under agroforestry systems, more than 100 tons of coffee, uh, good quality coffee that have been exported between 2019 and 2020 to the United States and Europe through the cooperative Bosque de Protección Alto Mayo, 5 nurseries with a production of 160,000 seedlings to strengthen the agroforestry systems, and more than 700 of hectares of forest that has been reforested. At the level of native community, we also done some intensive work. We have supported these communities to strengthen a, a plentiful life in the community. In this sense, we have supported the leaders to generate life plans, which are management instruments that allow plan the development of the indigenous land uh, accommodated to the regional and national context, but also giving value to key elements such as the conservations uh, in the in the community territory. We also strengthened the indigenous governance by strengthening uh, and this by strengthening the Awajún Regional Federation in Alto Mayo. To strengthen the indigenous supervision, we have worked on safeguards and we have strengthened the capacities of various stakeholders that are part of this community so they can work on monitoring, reporting, and verification uh, when looking after the indigenous territory, uh, looking after any possible elements that may cause deforestation in their land. We also worked on a gender approach and worked together with the indigenous women. We have strengthened their capacity. We have promoted leadership among indigenous women. We promoted higher participations of indigenous women in their own communities. And we have also supported the forest program, which is a public program, so they can take the gender approach through across the different services that they provide, particularly within native communities in the Amazon. When it comes to the indigenous community, inside the indigenous territory, we have supported the implementation of implemented 122 hectares of cocoa and 58 hectares of coffee. Under we also have started with a touristic entrepreneurship, which is because right now this community is touristic. Um, a touristic area promoted by the San Martin government by other stakeholders as a important touristic destination for the San Martin, and this is called the Nuwas Forest or Women's Forest. In this process, we have also supported and the development of other products such as medicinal plants, cassava, bananas, vanilla, uh, in order to recover the ancestral knowledge of these communities and how they would cultivate these products so they can be useful for the community, and they could also uh, could, uh, could be given in the market to generate some income. In deforestation, we have assisted native communities to preserve their forest, 600 hectares inside of the community forest, and also outside the forest in what we call the south area of the Alto Maya landscape. We have supported the conservation of 138 hectares of forest, which is more than 738 hectares of forest. More than 1,500 hectares of coffee and cocoa are under agroforestry systems. And here we have worked with the coffee and cocoa uh, uh, um, program of the regional government promoting strategies. We have more than 160,000 trees that have been planted in the Alto Mayo landscape. We also have strengthened the capacity of the communal policies among the Agua indigenous communities, so they can work with GPS in order to do control and surveillance in their forest. Finally, as the main conclusions, first, the importance of this joint work, the importance of having some articulated work, because fighting deforestation involves all the stakeholders in the territories to a fundamental element. And one of the learnings of this project that has been this joint work, national government, regional government, local governments, companies, producers, groups of interests, corporations. We have all joined efforts through the different dialogue platforms in order to establish strategies to fight deforestation. We were looking for the most suitable mechanisms to manage our productive change, particularly coffee, and find strategies that allow that it has to increase their competitiveness, and that that this crop compensated the ecosystem services that are needed for this value chain. Integrated all the tools related to reduce deforestation, safeguards, the red mechanisms, and other mechanisms that are extremely important. And through the work done in this project, were validated. Uh, and we found that we need to keep working on them. Capacity building among the public administration has been fundamental too. So now we have a team of managers, public specialists that understand the importance of promoting productive production chains with zero deforestation. Building the public policies among all the stakeholders have made possible that several of these policies promoted in the region now are being now will be implemented. The need of providing a voice to the most vulnerable sectors in the region, such as Native communities, Native women, the youth. That work also occurred as part of the project by generating valuable spaces to acknowledge these stakeholders. Acknowledging the environmental benefits and the practices, the production advantages of working with coffee and cocoa uh, under the zero deforestation logic. 100 tons of coffee placed through the cooperative from the protection forest at a higher prices than the local market is the best evidence of the work we've done in saying that conservation and restoration and compensation receive a payment. And finally, having a positive impact for the environment in benefit of our people. I would like to finish my presentation uh, acknowledging the team of professionals of CI Peru who were participating since 2016 in executing this project. To this team of professionals, specialists, men and women from CI Peru, I really want to thank you for your commitment, for your dedication eh, during the execution of this project. I really want to recognize your work and your calling and everything that you have shown us throughout this process. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Ivo,
Thank you
por
very
tu
much, Ivo,
presentación.
for your presentation.
Luego de conocer los resultados
After
alcanzados,
hearing about the results achieved, I would like to give the floor a video that summarizes the work done in the last few years that has been taking place in Peru. Go ahead with the video, please.
El paisaje del Alto Mayo es un área de especial importancia para el desarrollo sostenible de la región San Martín. Pero este paisaje también está compuesto por bosques fragmentados y una intensa producción de monocultivos agrícolas. Con apoyo de la Agencia Noruega de Cooperación para el Desarrollo NORAD y nuestros aliados locales, Conservación Internacional viene desarrollando un modelo de cadenas productivas con deforestación cero. Con este propósito venimos trabajando con agricultores, asociaciones de productores, comunidades nativas y autoridades locales y regionales.
El fomento de cadenas productivas con deforestación cero en café y cacao consiste en promover entre productores, transformadores, comercializadores e instituciones de apoyo la restauración de los servicios ecosistémicos de los cuales dependen las cadenas, los mismos que han sido degradados por deforestación o malas prácticas agrícolas. Conservación Internacional, junto a sus socios, viene implementando actividades como la restauración de bosques, la promoción de sistemas agroforestales, la asociatividad, la gestión de negocios, la articulación a mercados y la creación de valor con el propósito de mejorar los ingresos de los pequeños productores.
Para complementar estos esfuerzos, Conservación Internacional ha lanzado en el Perú el reto de café sostenible, que tiene como objetivo lograr que el café sea el primer producto agrícola sostenible del mundo. Cada vez más organizaciones se unen a esta iniciativa. Nuestro objetivo es demostrar que la gestión sostenible de la naturaleza ayuda a las personas a prosperar.
En el video hemos podido evidenciar un poco el trabajo que se
In the
realizó.
video, we saw a bit of the work that has taken place during these years within the framework of this project. This would have not been possible with the support of our partners. Next, we will give floor to the testimonials that will allow us to understand more about the activities that took place as part of these initiatives. First, I would like to welcome Milagros Sanibal, Director of Greenhouse Effect Gases Mitigation. Before, she was Regional Director of Climate Change in CI, and she was in charge of this project at the very beginning. She knows about the project, and you will see familiar because she was part of this video. Go ahead, Milagros. Thank you very much, Mirko. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. First of all, thank you very much for your invitation It's been a pleasure to me to join you in this meeting, in this event that somehow helps us to reflect on the work that has been taking place and how this is related to public policies at local level, at regional level, and at national level too. And as Marcus said, and you probably saw in the video, uh, uh, indeed, I I I had the honor of starting with this project a few years ago, and where definitely the work that has taken place looks after development and a leaking development and climate change. Many times we hear that there's a dichotomy in this, but I think the added value of this project is to see how public policies can go to specific spaces, local spaces, and how uh, in these local spaces can provide us with some lessons about the work that is taking place and how can it provide an input for public policies. I think that's something very relevant related to projects that start at local level and are linked to the work on the field with local people, with indigenous peoples, and that is also linked with local and regional governments. And I also would like to highlight some topics related to how these projects, in particular, the one that joined us today, uh, it's being linked to national public policies. This type of a project, no doubt about it, collaborates with some enabling conditions, and it's allowed us to have some experience and lessons learned to improve the implementation uh, at the territory level and also at public policy level. As many of you know, uh, Peru has been promoting uh, some topics related to our own design. And this year, related to the contribution or the national determined contributions. For the mitigation measures since 2018, within the technical work group of the national determined contributions, we identified 62 mitigation measures. From these 62 mitigation measures, 8 are related to forest or land or land use change. These 8 forest measures, when I started doing my reflections, I identified that definitely projects like this uh, can assist or can provide an input for 3 or even 4 of these measures. One related to mechanisms for forest conservation, because it is related with the program of forest conservation, as Ivo mentioned a moment ago, to support also native communities to reduce the pressure on their forest based on the incentives that we can provide to them. The other one is related to the effective management of natural protected areas because this is an important landscape in Alto Mayo where the protection core is related to the Alto Mayo protection forest. So this type of programs that can support this measure. And another of the approach is related to coffee and cocoa value change. And here we have an important link with agroforestry systems. And finally, I think we have lessons learned as to how we can keep on working related to the measures related to the community forest management. Within this context, I definitely hope that CI continues uh, making progress using the lessons learned from this project and is able to identify how this can keep strengthening the work of the people in Alto Mayo. where there is a large variety of different settlers, where definitely the work of the native communities in their performance so they can have a sustainable development. Also, the work that has taken place with the Awahon women related to the forest of the Nuwas, of the women, is a good example of how we can work in these programs using a general approach, uh, looking at the different projects uh, that are developed on the field. I think this provides us several lessons learned, and I invite you to this to start a discussion on these topics. Um, for example, related to the planning, um, to how the way these mitigation measures are being planned, and see how we are planning the roadmaps that come from the different sectors, so we can start linking and measuring how this type of initiatives help to reduce emissions on the field, and how they help us to comply with the national determined contributions. As you know, on December 18th, 2020, we sent the updates about national contributions. So again, I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to ask you to continue with this work of keep strengthening the work you're doing at local level, and with uh, the partnerships that you have with the local governments and regional governments, with public policies and reduce emissions. Definitely, the climate action, it's a task that involves all of us, and I hope this message uh, always includes CI, the work that CI is doing on the field. I also would like to thank, I know that the Guyana team is part of this meeting. I really want to thank you as well, because I had the opportunity of support you somehow, and it has definitely uh, quite. Quite grateful of knowing the experiences of other countries such as Guyana. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Milagros, for your message. Your input in this in this project has been fundamental, and set up the foundations to have a successful project. Now we will hear Oscar Lopez, Executive Director of the Contigo Associations, who is one of our partners, and their technical support has been one of the important foundations to execute this project.
Mi nombre es Oscar López Guanilo, soy director ejecutivo de la Asociación Civil Contigo Agrandando el Círculo. Somos más conocidos como ACAC por Asociados. Desde septiembre de 2016 a octubre de 2020 hemos ejecutado el proyecto Produciendo Café y Cacao con Deforestación Cero en el Alto Mayo, que era parte de un proyecto mayor llamado Abordando las causas de la deforestación en el Perú. El objetivo del proyecto era fortalecer las capacidades de las familias productoras de café y cacao en el Alto Mayo, con la finalidad que desarrollen un modelo de negocio sostenible. ¿Qué significa esto? Que en la producción actual de café y cacao puedan mejorar su producción en la misma área que tenían en ese entonces instaladas sus plantaciones, y sobre todo mejorar la calidad de sus cosechas, con la finalidad de acceder a mejores mercados especiales que le generen mayores ingresos a sus familias. El proyecto básicamente contempló 4 componentes: uno de asesoría técnica y capacitación en la finca de los productores, implementando las buenas prácticas agrícolas orgánicas y de post cosecha, y fomentando los sistemas agroforestales. El segundo componente, investigaciones adaptativas, en la cual nos permitió identificar o validar algunas prácticas que los agricultores podían implementar luego en sus fincas. Un tercer componente sobre asesoría en la parte de gestión empresarial y asociatividad, para que los productores manejen mejor y mejoren la elaboración de su plan de manejo de la finca, su registro de costos de producción, y tengan un registro de cosechas y ventas, para también hacer un balance económico al final de las campañas. Y tenemos el cuarto componente, que era de asesoría en articulación comercial y financiera, básicamente apoyándolos en la comercialización de sus cosechas en mercados que les puedan brindar mejores precios. Todas estas actividades que se desarrollaron en los 4 componentes del proyecto estuvieron bajo acuerdos de conservación que firmamos con cada una de las familias productoras del proyecto. A contrapartida de los servicios que recibían de nuestra parte las familias productoras, ellas se comprometían a producir sin deforestar bosque y también poner a disposición del proyecto su mano de obra y algunos materiales locales para la construcción y mejoramiento de infraestructura, sobre todo para la parte de post cosecha en café y en cacao. Respecto a los logros del proyecto, tenemos varios. Uno de ellos respecto a la conservación de bosques primarios que los productores mantenían en sus unidades productivas. Al final del proyecto, ningún árbol de esos bosques primarios se tumbó, ¿no? se mantuvieron intactos. Y con las prácticas de reforestación y restauración, al contrario, los productores incrementaron número de árboles bajo sistemas agroforestales con café y cacao, sembraron forestales en los linderos de sus parcelas y fincas y también en terrenos degradados, formando lo que llamamos macizos forestales o bosquetes. Logramos que los productores todos los años incrementen su producción. Los productores todos los años han tenido una buena producción constante y con una tendencia a crecer, porque justamente todas esas prácticas que han implementado orgánicas en abonamiento, control preventivo de plagas y enfermedades, mejoramiento de post cosecha, han posibilitado esta mejora en su producción de las familias productoras. Hemos terminado con un grupo de productores que son los que tenían ya muchos más años trabajando con nosotros. Han logrado alcanzar producciones de promedio 30 quintales por hectárea, en el caso de café, por ejemplo. También en el tema de certificaciones, se ha logrado la certificación de comercio justo para un buen grupo de estos productores, y posteriormente, cuando pasaron a conformar parte de la cooperativa Copban, lograron su certificación orgánica en forma retroactiva. Sobre algunas lecciones aprendidas, principalmente lo podemos englobar en 2. Una que tiene que ver con la importancia de la persona, tanto a nivel de técnicos como a nivel de productores, ¿no? Ese binomio técnico-productor es clave para cualquier actividad de mejora de los ingresos, del nivel de vida de los productores. Teniendo productores que realmente están motivados en mejorar su modelo de producción sin tener impactos negativos en el ambiente y accediendo a mejores mercados, y por otro lado teniendo técnicos que están deseosos de trabajar en campo y que constantemente se van capacitando y van también fortaleciendo sus capacidades, se pueden lograr buenos resultados con el proyecto. La segunda lección aprendida tiene que ver con el tema de sostenibilidad. Definitivamente, para lograr la sostenibilidad de las familias productoras en el ámbito rural, se necesita trabajar con modelos productivos que permitan que los productores lleguen a producir más en el área que actualmente tienen, sin necesidad de deforestar más bosque, ¿no? Incrementar la cantidad producida y que esa producción sea de mucho mejor calidad. Eso les va a permitir acceder a mercados especiales, y estos mercados especiales les retribuyen con un mejor precio, y por lo tanto al final las familias productoras pueden tener mejores ingresos y mejorar su nivel de vida.
Muchas gracias a Oscar por su presentación.
Thank you very much, Oscar, for your presentation and your words.
Quiero darme un tiempo también para
I would like to take some time to thank the ACAC team for all the achievements. And now we hear the testimonial of Daniela Vázquez Enepo, a regional manager of regional development for the regional government of San Martin. We have an alliance with the regional government of San Martin that have allowed us to have or develop joint activities in this project. Unfortunately, he cannot join the transmission, but we have a video from him. So go ahead with the video.
Reciban un cordial y fraternal saludo del Gobierno Regional de San Martín y de nuestro gobernador, doctor Pedro Guarín Vargas. Soy Daniel Vázquez Enepo, gerente regional de desarrollo económico del Gobierno Regional de En el marco de la alianza estratégica entre Conservación Internacional y el Gobierno Regional de San Martín, hemos participado activamente en la ejecución del proyecto denominado Abordando las causas de deforestación en Guyana y Perú, proyecto que se implementó con el apoyo de la Agencia Noruega para el Desarrollo. Nuestro apoyo se centró en el desarrollo de políticas públicas, la lucha contra la deforestación, la promoción de la inversión privada sostenible, el apoyo a las comunidades nativas, principalmente a Abajún del Alto Mayo. Los principales logros podemos indicar lo siguiente: la aprobación de la Ordenanza Regional 038-2018, que establece los lineamientos para el desarrollo económico y regional bajo en emisiones y su implementación con las agencias de desarrollo local y los comités técnicos de desarrollo económico territorial, principalmente a nivel de distritos y las provincias de la región San Martín. Otro logro importante es el apoyo a las actividades de la Autoridad Regional Ambiental, como la actualización de la política territorial, la mesa red y la estrategia regional de cambio climático. Y por último, actividades en las actividades económicas, la cooperativa COPBAN del Comité de Productores del Bosque del Alto Mayo, exportando café a varios países, incluyendo la venta de café para los parques temáticos de Disney. La iniciativa del Bosque de las Nubes como atractivo turístico. Aquí destaca también la producción de plantas nativas, ¿no?, para vender a empresas que transformaban este producto, por ejemplo, como taquiwasi. Aquí destaca, por ejemplo, las infusiones de las nubes, que ya se están vendiendo en el mercado, que ya son conocidos estas infusiones, entre otros productos, por ejemplo, ¿no? Y todos ellos con todos los requisitos del Ministerio de Salud a través de IGESA, por ejemplo. El principal aprendizaje es que sí es posible promover actividades económicas sin necesidad de deforestar nuestros bosques, y que más bien preservar nuestros bosques dan valor a nuestros productos e incrementan los ingresos de nuestros productores. Aquí es importante, por ejemplo, destacar que se tiene que trabajar avistamiento de aves, la producción de orquídeas, como se dijo, también las plantas medicinales. Sobre todo se convierten en excelentes destinos turísticos, ¿no? Por eso nosotros, todo este trabajo que hemos realizado con la cooperación noruega a través de Conservación Internacional, ha podido fortalecer estos espacios, del cual el gobierno regional, le está muy agradecido a Noruega con este apoyo que han sido pragmáticos prácticamente.
Muchas gracias a Daniel y al gobierno.
Thank you very much, Daniel and the San Martin Regional Government for this message. I want to thank all the Peruvian participants and everybody who is part of this project, the Ministry of Environment, the Regional Government of San Martin, to our partners, the indigenous communities and indigenous organizations, the civil society, and the different stakeholders that have supported us throughout the implementation of this project. Without you, it would have been not possible to achieve these results of contributing to the people's development, the conservation of the Alto Mayo landscape, and of the country. Before continuing, I would like to remind you that you can register using the link in the chat and ask any questions. Now, we will give the floor to our colleagues in Guyana, who are going to present the results of the activities that took place in their country. And now I would like to give the floor to Rene Edwards and for CI Guyana. Go ahead, Rene.
Thank you, Mirko. Buenos dias. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Rene Edwards from CI Guyana, and it's a pleasure to share with you this morning the results from the project implemented here in Guyana. So the Addressing Drivers of Deforestation project in Guyana. In the context of the project, what I'd like to share with you first is that this project fits within our country program as part of our responsible mining initiative. Lots of people would ask, why is CI Guyana involved in gold mining, given all of the challenges we know that there is with gold mining and we see in the news? For us, it's important because gold mining is one of the largest economic sectors in Guyana, contributing about 15% to our GDP, about 50% in terms of export earnings, and also a significant employer, with about 50% of the gold produced coming from small and medium scale gold miners. Of course, we know that gold mining is a driver of ecological change, deforestation, and other forms of ecosystem degradation. So 6 or 7 years ago, CI really took the position, CI Guyana took the position that this is an important sector that we have to work with, and we have to make sure that we're influencing change within the sector towards more responsible and sustainable practices. And our aim in this sector really is about focusing on fostering responsibility, fostering sustainability, reducing the negative impacts, of course, related to deforestation and impacts on forests, but also the other impacts on other ecosystems, fresh water, and reducing and where feasible, eliminating the use of mercury. However, we also recognize that this has to be done in an environment where there are incentives and miners and other people involved in the sector can see that they can do these activities with increased productivity and, of course, profitability. So with our partners, we've designed a overall process that focuses on the full market chain or the value chain, focusing just not from the production side, but also importantly, exploration, processing, restoration and rehabilitation, and links to markets for responsibly mined gold. It's important to point out at the beginning of this presentation that while CI Guyana has been the lead in terms of this project, our partners, similar to Peru, and as Curtis explained at the top of the session, our partners have been key in working on this responsible mining initiative, which also has a sister project, the Jeff Gold project, that focuses on the reduction and where feasible elimination of the use of mercury in gold mining in Guyana. Partners that we've worked with, Curtis went through them already, but just to recap, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, the Guyana Women Miners Organization, the National Tushhouse Council, and of course, CI Guyana. These partners worked with us, and we worked through a governance framework of a project steering committee, where we not only looked at the governance of the project and the responsible mining initiative, but we collaborated on actual implementation on the ground. And I think that's been really key. It's important to point out that there's healthy tension. As you can recognize, we have the private sector, the government, indigenous organizations, and conservation organizations. And I think this is where innovation and change happens, when we have a good mix of different organizations, as we'll discuss outcomes. One outcome focused on policy, both at the national, but also the regional and local levels, and really looking at how we could stimulate policy change towards the integration of more equitable, so more inclusive, more equitable green growth principles that focuses on sustainability. And these have been integrated into various national level policies and also in the private sector, because the private sector actually is where the action happens on the ground, and obviously in the communities where we work. Important to point out that the second outcome really focused on natural resource management measures. So measures related to gold mining and how to improve the practice of gold mining, and measures related to working with local and indigenous people to improve resource management at their community and regional level. It's also important to point out that in Guyana, there are indigenous communities that carry out small and sometimes medium scale gold mining. So it's really important that we move quickly on this. In terms of these policies and focused on reducing deforestation, degradation, and also improve land management, it's important to point out that there all the elements that have to play in a role in this process of actually getting the results we want in terms of improved management of natural capital or natural resources and improve people's well-being. And that is actual capacity building. And this was done a lot through our work with the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association to develop a technical and outreach program, and also partnering with the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission to implement that program. It also involved developing and moving to implement multi-stakeholder resource management plans on the ground with communities and the regional government, especially in the Rupununi region, and also being able to come together as stakeholders to discuss and move in terms of dialogue towards change and moving with the policy on the ground. For outcome one, we, in terms of the achievement against our results framework, we were able to achieve 100% of the work that, under this policy outcome. And we focused a lot on, as you'll see in a moment, the development of research. So we had evidence-based research that informed policy both at the national level, local level, and with communities. And importantly, the research and dialogues that informed the policies that we developed were informed by action on the ground also. So this interplay between policy and action is very important. Some of the research that we worked on, important pieces of research, included a knowledge, attitudes, and practices assessment at the beginning of the project, so we could understand the situation with miners in Guyana, what their knowledge about not just mining, but also the forest and the environment. That informed our awareness and education strategy. We also did research on the prospecting, which I'll go into in a moment, characterization of mining, so looking at where mining is happening by tenure and region, the economics of mining. So if you want to understand the incentives available for changing behavior, we also have to understand the economic situation, and also restoration. As I said, the findings of the research really is what informed practice and also policy. For example, our research on the our research on the prospecting and exploration in Guyana, led by the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, really gave us a seminal amount of information, an important amount of information that helped us to understand how miners are doing exploration, what methods they're using, because it's important for us in the sense that we have to, in terms of practice on the ground, we have to work towards working with miners towards getting them to identify areas where there are rich commercial deposits. So they focus on those areas and as such, reduce the impacts on other areas. So as we say here in Guyana, mining, we want to move away from doing mining blindly. And this research was really important to develop exploration program with the GGDMA that they were able to do training with miners on the ground. In terms of the research on where mining, in terms of spatial characterization of mining, where mining is happening by district, we were able to do, this is led by Carrie-Anne from our team, and this research was really looking at where the mining is happening spatially, and this informed our interventions in terms of focus policy in the different regions, and also helped us to inform where the demonstrations and training could happen on the ground. As I mentioned, we looked at economics of mining because one of the things in terms of moving towards responsible mining practices and equipment, we have to understand the cost and benefits of using this equipment. And that research has been used to inform the practices in terms of developing incentives. And we're at the moment finalizing research on developing a national restoration map for Guyana, which really is important. Guyana is a high forest, low deforestation country, and we have to make sure that we have to keep it that way and be ahead of the curve. And restoration forms a key part of the work we're doing and partners are doing on the ground. As I mentioned, the policy dialogues were an important part of taking this research to a policy level. We've had policy dialogues on all of the research except the restoration so far. We have that at the end of this month. It's important to point out that these policy dialogues involved multiple stakeholders, and it involved the presentation and discussion and debate around the results. And the important point is that this results in the development of the results have been used to inform policy, as I mentioned earlier. The second outcome related to our work with miners and indigenous and local communities on the ground really focused on the capacity building and the development of measures with indigenous communities to improve resource management. This outcome really was really exciting and challenging especially over the last year because we were affected by obviously the COVID pandemic, and we were not able to complete all of the trainings on the ground. However, we're still able to complete about 85% of this outcome. And the training actually on the ground was led by the GGDMA, the Mining Association, along with the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, to train miners and other people involved in the mining sector to improve practices. And the work really involved the setting up of a technical outreach program and a technical service program within the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association. We think this is a major achievement because the association was able to provide technical services on the ground to miners in exploration, as I mentioned earlier, but also processing. And they're able to institutionalize this program to the point where they now have a technical services team that they work with partners to provide training on the ground. From the photographs, you can see some of the first photograph on the far left is demonstrating the exploration practices, and the one on the far right is demonstrating the processing or mineral recovery practices. The work on the ground in terms of the demonstration and the trainings towards more responsible mining and has been really informed by the development of a series of engagement tools. One of the things that we recognize from the earlier work on the development of the knowledge, attitudes, and practices survey is that miners really are interested and are more interested in visual aids and videos. And this is what we did in terms of developing the tools with the various partners. It's also important to point out that these tools were developed in collaboration with all of the partners I mentioned earlier. So the reach for these tools goes beyond just this project, but to the various programs and projects that all of the partners are doing. We think this is a very important achievement so that in terms of sustainability and continuity and in line with what the miners and the local communities are require in terms of training. In terms of the results measures and resource measures on the ground, a big part of what we did, similar to Peru, is the development of life plans, long-term village plans, or village improvement plans for indigenous communities here in Guyana. This program was also implemented in the Rupununi in southern Guyana and in Region 8, specifically in Campbelltown Village. It's important to point out that during the life of the project, we were able to institutionalize this program within the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs as the Sustainable Villages Program. And so now the ministry, along with other partners, are developing these life plans or long-term village plans across the country for the 200 plus indigenous communities that are here in Guyana. The project supported the development and testing of the methodology of these life plans, these village plans. And as you can see from the photos, there are various stages of the development of the plans that really looked at the long-term visioning, but also the priority sectors that include resource management and nature, health, education, traditions and traditions, livelihood, governance, and finance. This is an example of one of the posters from a village plan. It is a participatory process that involves all of the members of the village and led by the village leadership. It's important to point out that this plan is what drives investment in the villages, and it incorporates both nature conservation and livelihood development. The village improvement plan, one of the innovations from this project, is really implementing this village planning process in a mining community, an indigenous mining community. And one of the important parts of this also is also incorporating this into the regional development planning process in the Rupununi. The project also supported the development of a regional plan in the Rupununi region with support from the regional chairman, Mr. Brian Alicock. And that program now is being updated as part of the project, as part of the regional development process. It's important to point out that the regional development plan incorporates, as I mentioned, the village plan, and incorporates also conservation planning that we were able to do with the region. The project is about deforestation and reducing deforestation caused by mining. And one of the indicators that we're looking at is the deforestation across the country. Guyana has a wall-to-wall monitoring, reporting, and verification system, which is also funded by the Kingdom of Norway, just like this project. And the project, this project really used that monitoring system to track change and to inform what we are doing and to look at results on the ground. At the beginning of the project, we were looking at the reducing deforestation by 25% against the 2013 deforestation numbers. And while the project alone is not responsible for the changes that we're seeing on the screen, the blue actually in the bar graphs signify deforestation caused by mining, and the gray by other drivers. And as you can see, deforestation actually over the life of the project up to 2019 was reduced by more than 50%. As I said, the project in itself cannot be attributed to the change that we're seeing, but it's important to point out that the project, along with other key initiatives implemented by our partners, are most likely contributing to this change. It's important to point out that this national level system is important for us so that it can inform policies and practices related to forest management, related to mining, but also other industries such as forestry. Important to the project, obviously, is the lessons that we've learned. And some key lessons that we took away from the project is that the design of projects like this have to take into consideration the long-term horizon of change and behavioral change. So it has to be multi-year. So sustainability is key. Key to sustainability is the development of institutional capacity and institutional sustainability. And for this, both in the private sector, such as the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, but in the government and other sectors, especially communities, working directly with small-scale miners and small-scale operators is important to addressing deforestation. Communities and miners have a lot of traditional and ancestral knowledge that have to be recognized and incorporated into design. And the project design and implementation have to take this into account. Also, importantly, a key lesson is that the sustainable approach, the sustainable landscape approach, and sustainable land management, where multiple perspectives have to be taken on board, is key to reducing deforestation and addressing climate change and improving people's livelihoods. The idea that you're bringing different stakeholders together to plan and implement becomes key to this process. And with that, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank our partners and also to thank our implementation team here in Guyana, both technical and operational, who've put a lot of work into this project, and we've overcome a lot of challenges initially to the point where we can successfully present the work that we've done. We'd also like to thank our partners in CI Peru, where we learned a lot during our visit, our headquarters team, and CI Europe, and of course the donors, the Kingdom of Norway. So thank you very much. And we'd like to share with you now a short video that summarizes the situation here in Guyana. Thank you.
My name is Gladstone Solomon. I am a miner. I mine for gold and diamonds. I started mining at the age of 12 years old. At that age, it was real hard on me. I had to become a man at that time to upkeep. But we had no choice. We have to work to eat, work to survive. Yeah.
The forest here in Guyana is really, really special. It's very old forest. It's part of what's called the Guyana Shield, which is an area in northern South America. So the forest here actually is very old. It stores lots of carbon.
I go a lot of places and see people destroying the forest because of the gold, and they don't care about the forest. They just want the gold and they don't concern about the forest if it dry or if it burn or nothing else.
So gold mining is one of the main threats to the Amazon in Guyana and in wider South America. It causes a lot of deforestation. A lot of areas have to be cleared for mining, so it destroys a lot of forests, but it also damages other ecosystems like rivers and creeks. I think the big challenge for us is because we're so dependent on the mining.
Yes, Vicky, morning. How is the price?
It's hard to just say to stop mining. You have to figure out how we can have mining that has a very low impact.
Yeah.
We've been working with miners over the last 2 or 3 years to help them to have more responsible ways of mining. So ways that have a less negative impact or bad impact on the environment and the people. We're doing this by helping them to get new technology where you can actually do mining without mercury in the production of gold. We want to work with them to have more forest-friendly mining. Currently, when miners go into areas, many times they go in what they call mining blindly. So they go and they clear lots of forests and they don't find the gold. So what we're trying to promote is for them to use what's called prospecting. So really going to explore using a more scientific way of finding where the gold is by prospecting the land. And when they find the areas that have commercially viable deposits, they can just focus on those small areas as opposed to clearing big areas, only finding it in the small areas. And then at the end, you help it to restore back to its natural condition. The forest can regenerate and it would be better for obviously the plants and animals, but the people who live around there.
Muchas gracias, René, y felicitaciones.
Thank you very much, Rene, and congratulations to all the Guyana team. Now we will give the floor to the representatives from the organizations that were involved in the implementation of this project in Guyana. We want to invite Diana MacDonald, the Deputy Commissioner for the Geology and Mining Commission of Guyana, organisms that regulates the mining in Guyana, based on the mining law of 1989 that became the guardian of minerals in this country. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you very much, Marco, and good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, everyone. I'm pleased to be a part of this discussion on this important project. Indeed, as you said in the introduction, the GGMC is considered the custodian of the mineral resources of the Republic of Guyana. And as the regulators, we can be considered the superintendent of the entire sector, which is across 6 mining districts. While we have 6 mining districts as a country, we have 10 administrative regions. And as Rennie said earlier in his presentation, this project is under the CI's Responsible Mining Initiative, and we, the Commission, we are a part of the project steering committee among the other partners. And our contribution to this project has been, our major contribution has been in the area of technology and technical assistance, primarily in the area of mineral recovery, making available mineral processing equipment and personnel to participate in the field activities that would have been completed that Rennie mentioned. I see we would have collaborated to date in approximately 20 field activities covering 3 mining districts, mining districts 2, 4, and 5, which equates to regions 8, 7, and 1. And so it's important to note that even as we were involved in the field activities with respect to recovery, we would have been involved also in the activities looking at prospecting, supporting the work that was led by the GGDMA. Indeed, we have been supporting the capacity building effort that was alluded to in Renie's presentation. One of the key results we see in this project, indeed, the GGDMA's Technical Services Unit and the Commission has been given support in paying the emoluments for the director of that unit. And we also made available one of our geologists, we secondment to the association, to help with that process of building capacity, because as Rennie pointed out, the Commission too wants to see sustained economic growth of the sector, but at the same time for there to be mitigating of the environmental impact. So the fact that we would have been working on the ground and also working with the different stakeholder engagement and forum and dialogue that was alluded to, that has been a plus in that it has helped to boost even the Commission's own work that we would have been pushing through our main technical divisions, which is the mines, the geological services, and the environmental division. But in this aspect of the project, the mineral processing unit, which is part of the mines division, would have been working integrally in the project, in these field activities, and participating in the stakeholder engagements and dialogue. And in addition to the technical service unit, one of the key results, I think, would be the preparation of SOPs and guidelines for the demonstrations. I think this helps in ensuring that in addition to we having collaboration among different groups, that we we have, as it were, the same songbook to sing from when we go there, so that different personnel from different agencies are not saying different things and maybe confusing the miners. But we have a common goal and common objectives. So I think the guidelines and SOPs for demonstrations is one of the key results. Also, we would have been involved in the development of some of the education and awareness tools, which are among the results. Then I saw already showed some of them, the videos. It was the recent guidelines for safe working in this pandemic. And of course, main result is the collaboration among multiple stakeholders of different interests for in this case, the conservation agencies working with the sector and the commission on mining. Traditionally, would be on opposite sides when it comes to these issues, but as Rennie remarked, it allowed for good tension that allowed for us to find solutions to help the sector to develop without having adverse impact on the environment. And so we have learned through the process that to push in the sector and to promote and encourage the changes, the cultural changes, technical support services covering the entire mining cycle has to be ongoing and sustained. And so one of the things that we have identified, as was pointed out, is demonstration sites where demonstrations will be done and allowed and allow for continual engagement with the sector, because in the past we would have gone into areas and done demonstrations, but left and went on to other areas, and sometimes when you return, the operator may have had issues and not having that ongoing support, just resorted to what is familiar. And so having select areas that will allow for sharing of information covering the entire mining cycle is a plus, and it's something that we saw in the process is needed. One other thing too is we in this process we see that we have to have some amount of flexibility in the whole process as we look at solutions and continue to test them, because these are different stakeholders with different approaches and experiences to the issue within the sector. So we must always have space to continue learning, sharing information, building the confidence and trust, and as we adapt to the changes. Because I must say now, with such intervention, such engagement and relations, I think we are in a better place when it comes to sharing information and building trust and confidence, and that allows us as different stakeholders, government, the mining sector, say private sector, and the mining communities, to work together to realize a common goal of developing economic development and sustained growth of the sector, the communities, and at the same time to mitigate the impact of mining on the environment. And so the Commission will continue to give critical support to this effort as we continue on this journey of improving mining in Guyana. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dayan, por tu testimonio.
Thank you very much, Diane, for your testimonial. Now we will hear Hilbert Shields, executives from the Golden Miner and the Diamonds Association in Guyana, a private sector association that was founded in the 70s related to gold and diamond mining. The idea is to share the idea that all this this organization is negotiated on behalf of the mining community and promote the promotion and growth of this industry. Go ahead, Hilbert.
Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to be invited to participate in this wrap-up forum. It was interesting to listen to the progress that was made in Peru. I'd love to have you send me some of those coffee beans so I can savor the results of the hard work that's been done. So congratulations to everyone in Peru. Recognizing that we're getting on to high noon, I'll try to be fairly brief. I'll make some very specific micro issue comments and then some macro issue comments. And it's my role. I am the vice president of the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, and I'm also the chairman of the technical committee. So I've been closer to this project, to some of my colleagues, closer to some of the challenges and some of the benefits. And I would like to thank one that is at the forefront of pushing support for the concept and the idea. When we look at the way that mining is done in Guyana at the small and artisanal level, there are a lot of things that we recognize that can be done differently and that can be done better. But I also speak and focus attention on the fact that there is tradition. Things have evolved to be done the way they are because it makes sense. It makes sense for the people that are doing it in terms of having a sustainable livelihood, because at the end of the day, that is why people do these things. They get involved in these activities, not because they set out to be deliberately destructive of environments and ecosystems. They set out primarily to look after their families and then hopefully build enough to be able to educate them and to sustain a livelihood. So when you bear that in mind, you have to look at what they do. I use this analogy all the time. You cannot make an omelet without breaking eggs. So the question begs, and how do you break eggs responsibly or sustainably? Well, those are oxymoronic statements when you look at them in terms of the meanings of the word. But then you look at the practices. As I came into the association executive and saw the idea that Conservation International, which is an entity that can be viewed as, having a different role or a different modus vivendi from the Miners Association, and then with the regulatory agency as GGMC, you can see that dialogue would have not been a dialogue at all, but people talking at each other rather than to each other. And so as we got involved and as this project has changed how it can benefit all of the stakeholders, whether it's the three that I just mentioned or the environment in which we go, where a main host is the indigenous communities. It went from one of talking at each other to talking to each other, and then starting to think, how can we do this better? And so we looked at silos of where we can do things. As an exploration geologist, it was very easy for me to step in to look at the exploration practices and look at how they can be done better and how they can minimize their footprint. Now, that's an ongoing process. And it's one that we can continue to do better. But at least we've taken those baby steps of understanding that if you prospect and if you explore, and you do that by a different set of techniques that is different from your mining, you can minimize your footprint. And as we do that, and as we introduce what we have learned, we've also recognized that processing and processing technology to make what is probably a 30% recovery more efficient, to where we get it up to 60 or 70% recovery. Then the material, the tails that comes out of those mining operations, if they become sterilized, devoid of any more gold, then the miners will no longer see them as a resource. And then you can speak to after use and rehabilitation of mine out areas and to sustain them going forward when they no longer are a repository of gold. So those are the things that we have focused on, and we, Renee captured the challenges and the outcomes and the results of that process. And so I would not dwell more in providing details. What I would like to speak to is the process going forward. I'm a firm believer that if you start this process and you don't sustain it and you don't build on the blocks that you put in, then you really have not achieved very much. So where do we go from here? To continue to have the dialogue, NORAD as a funding partner has been a globally responsible organization. And the fact that they have participated in this, and the fact that I sit and I engage, where conservation organizations, regulatory organizations, mining and stakeholder impact communities are all engaged in dialogue. That is the greatest plus in the outcome from this project. But it would be wasted if we do not build on it going forward. So how do we build on it going forward? We need to push the adoption of the methods that we have tested and elucidated and communicated as best practices, but we should not stop there. We should continue to push the envelope of technology, find better practices, and then be able to inform ourselves that these are good practices so that we can become good advocates of this in the industry. Because at the artisanal level, at the pork knocker level, as we talk about the small guy in Guyana, whatever we do has got to make economic sense for him. Because if he's not able to make a livelihood and to sustain that livelihood, he would not adopt it. But we don't want him to just sustain. We want him to grow. We want to make him bigger and better. We want to take him to a different level. Otherwise, we have not beneficially impacted his life. And so that is where we have to engage with him as to how we can move forward. And the big stride for us has got to be in the technology side, as my colleague Diane alluded to, where we find, test, communicate, and get buy-in to better technologies. And I think that is the challenge. That is the challenge for the next hurdle. I would like to see continuity in the effort where we improve on what we know we can do better, but also push the envelope to better practices. Once we get there, then we will achieve the ultimate objective, which is to be able to extract the resource, because gold is not everywhere in the country. Gold is a God-given endowment that is there in specific areas. So you can't change where it is. You can't take it to a better host environment because, you know, it's not everywhere. It's in a specific area. But if we can then find a way to get the benefit out of the endowment that is in that specific area and then return it to good, beneficial after use, then I think we would have been good stewards of our environment and have taken care of our people. So going forward, I would like to see us be able to look at what it is we can do to make it happen better. And so the Global Environmental Fund Project, the ability to incentivize miners to adopt better practices. It cannot just be a stick. It has to be a combination of a carrot and a stick. And so while we will have to gently push the envelope to cause miners to embrace better practices because it makes long-term sense, we still have to focus on the near term. It's got to make economic sense. And it has to be sustainable as an activity, not as destructive as it may have been historically. But my colleague, that's the technical leader of a lot of the work that we do, William Wolford, a former commissioner of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, always speak to what is the definition of deforestation. Because if you take a life cycle of about 25 years from the time you mine, after mine and nature comes back, and you go back to those same areas, and they've got used trees on them, not necessarily because of direct action from us, but from indirect action, then you have to look at it in the larger framework, because that gold is not growing back and that gold is not coming back. And like oil and some of the other extractive resources, when you take them out, they're done, they're gone. So mining by definition will have a finite life, and the type of mining will have a finite life. I see us evolving from the river dredges to the land dredges. Now we're mining saprolite or surface oxidized material, and eventually then we will have to go deeper. And once we evolve to where we become like Peru, like Colombia, like Venezuela, where the mining moves from surface to subsurface, then the environmental footprint by definition is going to be reduced. And the techniques that we use to explore and mine are going to have to evolve and change. So the point I want to make, this has been a great project in that it has started a conversation, it has started engagement, it has changed the process of talking to talking with and engaging. But let us not stop here. Let us not rest on our laurels and pat ourselves in the back. NORAD, we need you to continue to support the process, because it only works if you build on top of the blocks that you have created. As a miners association, we recognize that mining and mining activities, like all economic activities, have to evolve, and they have to evolve to be better and more responsible, to leave a heritage for our children that is better than the ones we got from our parents. So with that said, thank you all very much. Thanks CI for starting. Thanks CI management for having the vision to do this engagement. And I embrace the fact that it's all parties that are there, and I hope that we're able to move on to the next step. So thanks again, have a good day, and I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to have worked with the project on behalf of the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association. And thanks again for the support.
Muchas gracias, Gilbert, por tus palabras y tu testimonio. Ahora es la oportunidad de...
Thank you, Gilbert, for your words and your testimonial. Now we want to hear Jude Silva, Executive Director of the Toshao National Council, who will tell us her experience in this project. The Toshao National Council is an organization from all the indigenous leaders in Guyana, and is governed by a board of 20 members. Go ahead, Jude.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Judy Silva, Indigenous, not from Georgetown, but I work in Georgetown as head of the Secretariat, the National Toshao Council Secretariat, which is the largest organization in Guyana, Indigenous Peoples Organization, established by law. And our membership is throughout the length and breadth of this country. I like to speak on how I became involved and how the NTC became involved in this project. Prior to 2016, the National Toshao Council did not have a space to host the Secretariat. So the ADOD project provided institutional strengthening and capacity building of the National Toshao Council. And out of that support, we saw the operationalization of the Secretariat. We had a space to operate, rentals and overheads were being supported. Also, there were technical personnel recruited to help the members of the council. What also happened is organizational procedure, process, and assets were put in place. So now we have all these assets or processes operationalized, and we were able to get the accounting software, that is the QuickBook, that is managing our financial resources and other resources. We had capacity building done for that. I had a capacity building along with 2 other staff. we were able to develop the asset register, both electronically and physically, along with gift register, electronically and physically. We had a financial management that is what we're using to guide our financial management for better financial management. And we had administrative manual. And along with that, we were able to have the program coordinator who is still in our employ. So she's been working very hard on a procedure where indigenous peoples from indigenous communities, the National Tushaus Council can be able to help resolve some of the issues they face with respect to mining, with respect to other natural resources illegally, those that are being mined illegally and those that pollute the water and so forth. So we have that system in place now that is making it easier for the Tushaus to report it. And so we can help in advancing this thing, the issues to the respective agencies. So that's a very good plus for us. And we also were able to produce some COVID-19 communication education material on the awareness, the risk, and that was disseminated to many of the indigenous communities. They were very thankful for it because the content was very simple and easy to understand. Those are the things that we were able to achieve, and as an organization moving forward, I am very proud and happy of where we are today. And I know that the rest of the Tushaus are also happy because we have this space now and we are moving forward. I would like to say thanks to CI for this initiative. It has helped us tremendously. And I'm very impressed with all the work CI has been doing also in Peru. It's very, very impressive. I visited Peru as well. And what caught my attention is the traditional knowledge sanctuary. And as I speak, I'm developing a advocacy plan for indigenous people's traditional knowledge. I like how it is being managed there. I like how it is more or less to like a tourist site, but it's being preserved. That's really not happening in Guyana, unfortunately. The women's group, oh, I can't forget the nutritious food that they have given to us. It's haunting my memory. I always make mention of it, of what a group of women can do with the foods from the forest. When I was there and I was extremely hungry, I was looking for some rice or something to eat. And when I saw the fruits, I said, this would not fill me. But oh my, when I started to eat this thing, I could have eaten all, it was so good. That's something that could to be replicated here with the fruits from the forest. The production of coffee on large scale. I don't know what to say. I wish if that could be happening in Guyana. It is, but I would like indigenous peoples to be more involved in coffee production at that scale. And by the way, I brought two, but somebody stole it from me. So that's how we got involved in this ADOD project. And we're very proud, as I said, of our achievements, the institutional strengthening we got from CI, and the kind of support that I got from Rennie and his team. Up to today, we're getting that kind of support. Rennie, I'd like to express my gratitude to you and to the rest of the staff for this kind support you have been rendering to the National Tushaus Council. I'd also like to say thank you to NORAD for making this possible. To the team from Peru, I wish if I could go and spend a week in that sanctuary to get more information on how I can have it done in Guyana. And so I'm very pleased with everyone's presentation, very impressive. I did not realize the extent of the outcome of the ADOD project. So this does not only happen for CI, it's all of us, all the partners involved made this a success. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Jude. Quiero agradecer a todos los participantes de
Thank you,
Guyana.
Jude. I want to thank all participants from Guyana and the different stakeholders that have made possible these results and have allowed us to get to know a bit more about the efforts that are developed in this country. The project also had a local component by generating some learning spaces and exchanges in the countries to promote dialogue in international forums and support different strategies such as red strategies that contribute to conservation. And therefore, I would like to invite Kirisa Capricis, a senior manager for policies in an office in the United States, who will tell us a bit more about these topics. Go ahead, Kirisa.
Sí, Kirisa, ¿nos escuchas?
Hola, Mirko. Hi, Mirko. 1 second. I am trying to, let's see. No. Share. There we go. Share.
Sí, podemos ver tu presentación.
Okay. Is it good now, the presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mirko. Hi, everyone. I'm Carissa Kasprzak, Senior Manager for Climate Policy at Conservation International, located in Washington, D.C. And I'm really excited to be here today to share some of the results and lessons learned on the international dimensions of the Addressing Drivers of Deforestation project. And so first, I'd like to just quickly review the international policy components of the project, which were focused on sharing lessons between Peru and Guyana, and then sharing experiences and recommendations from the project with other international actors to both share lessons from the project as well as inform the project with other global best practices, as well as inform international policy dialogues on forest issues and REDD+ with experiences of the project and vice versa. So to meet these goals, the project employed several key approaches. The first was international policy dialogues to share recommendations and lessons learned, policy engagement in key forums of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, including the negotiations on agriculture, analysis of global policy dialogues, reports to summarize the results of the project alongside other scientific and analytical findings, and then international exchanges with the project participants. So I'll go into detail about these approaches and then highlight key outcomes from each one. So one of the key approaches for our international policy engagement was centered around the Coronivia Joint Work on Agriculture under the UNFCCC, which emerged in 2017 at the beginning of the project as an important decision-making forum on land use, sustainable development, and forest issues. So early on in the project, CI engaged with negotiators on issues around forests, smallholder farmers, and indigenous communities, which was reflected within the KJWA, or Coronivia Joint Work on Agriculture, decision that then guided the negotiations and workshop topics of the KJWA throughout the end of 2020. And then throughout the KJWA process, CI continued to share recommendations to country delegations during each of the UNFCCC meetings, as well as bilateral discussions with negotiators. So these types of engagements then allowed CI to understand where each party stood on some of the issues, their priorities, and then opportunities, or sometimes lack thereof, to highlight issues around smallholders, indigenous communities, and forests within the decision text from each meeting. There's another component of the international policy engagement was more informal dialogues. So CI convened several side events during the UNFCCC sessions, as well as some webinars with partner organizations to convene policymakers and other important stakeholders from all regions of the world throughout the project. So these dialogues presented project results and lessons learned, and also encouraged really open sharing of challenges, successes, and other best practices that were developed via programs to address smallholder-driven deforestation and climate action in the forest sector. So during these events, participants discussed topics ranging from different national and subnational policies and programs that successfully incentivize sustainable land management, such as training and extension services, conservation agreements, and strengthening of local institutions. Benefits of cooperative approaches between public and private sector, as well as local communities. Considerations for including nature-based solutions and agriculture within the nationally determined contributions for the Paris Agreement, including how to create feasible goals within these action plans and localize national and international efforts for implementation on the ground, as well as identification of challenges and barriers such as lack of land tenure, short-term thinking, and lack of finance for these issues. So the results of these dialogues were cataloged and disseminated among the project stakeholders and then integrated into the project strategies and activities as appropriate throughout the project. Another key approach to complement these policy engagements was several analyses of the global discourse on issues relating to smallholder-driven deforestation. So this helped us get a feel for the pulse of where and how people were talking about or not talking about this topic. So we did a baseline analysis in 2017 that identified that the global forums that were analyzed were indeed talking about these issues very differently. So for example, the Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, was by far the leader in presenting a relatively nuanced discussion of the role of smallholders in forest management. And the Center for International Forestry Research, or CIFOR, was the only body at that time discussing smallholder mining and forest issues. Most of the other forums did display gaps in these topics. So for example, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, or IICA, was actually at that time only focused on productivity improvements for smallholders. On the other hand, the World Bank Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, one of the leaders in REDD+ implementation, while they acknowledged these issues related to smallholders and forests, they didn't actually focus any support on addressing those issues. And then also the UNFCCC was identified as underemphasizing and overgeneralizing the intersection of smallholders, forests, and climate. But it was also identified as likely receptive to increased uptake of these issues depending on the views of parties. So this type of baseline analysis helped shape CI's engagement with the UNFCCC and the Coronivia Joint Work on Agriculture, as well as the engagement with IICA, which did become a key strategic partner for the rest of the project. And then after this baseline analysis, CI did continue an annual analysis of the Coronivia Joint Work on Agriculture negotiations to track how parties were discussing smallholder farmer and forest topics. So due to the nature of the KJW agenda, which did focus on different topics at each session, the exploration of smallholders and forests did fluctuate during each session, depending on whether or not it was relevant to the topic at hand. But the analysis did show that over the course of the KJWA negotiations, that there was an overall increase in the number of parties and the number of mentions relating to smallholder farmers and sustainable forest and agriculture management. So some of CI's engagement efforts, along with our partners, were successful in convincing parties about the importance of these topics within the negotiations. Another key communications approach was to compile and formally share the lessons learned and recommendations resulting from the project. So CI published 2 reports. The first was in 2017, Migrant Smallholders, Deforestation and the Landscape Approach, which presented really early results from Peru and Guyana, as well as the policy discourse analysis, which highlighted CI's integrated landscape approach initiatives and our global policy initiatives. And then early this year, we published will be a final report for the project on policy solutions to protect forests and support small farmers, which complements the project results, mostly from Peru, with scientific and analytical findings on best practices to enable sustainable forest management with smallholder farmers. So this report presents findings on the really complex relationship between smallholder farmers and forests, a review of past and current policy efforts. So it highlights successes of these efforts, but mostly actually challenges arising from what we would consider to be one-dimensional policy interventions and continued barriers to progress in this topic. It does highlight really positive results that we've seen from implementation of the integrated landscape approach, and then recommendations for creating enabling conditions for this approach. So this section does focus on case studies from the Altamaya project, as well as an EICA project in Mexico. And then the report concludes with a review of the role of different types of policy arenas, international, national, and subnational, and then recommendations for each type of policy arena to advance more holistic efforts to address the needs of smallholder farmers with forest protection. And this section is really informed by the best practice and lessons learned that were compiled from all of the international policy exchanges. And then the last international dimension of the project is formal exchanges between Peru and Guyana. So the first exchange took place when the Guyanese project participants visited Peru in September of 2019. So this visit included a 2-day exchange in Lima with the Norwegian embassy, key CI staff, national government, technical and national indigenous partners, and then a 2-day site visit to Altamaya to engage with the regional government, local indigenous communities and project participants, and then discuss synergies with the Guyana Rupununi project. So key topics covered during this visit included challenges and opportunities in Peru's mining sector to compare it to what was going on in Guyana's mining sector, advances in REDD+, such as payment in ecosystem services and other market-based mechanisms for forest management. Some of these new approaches to integrated landscape management, sustainable agriculture, restoration, and then commodity such as cocoa and coffee, branding and certification. Promoting sustainable livelihoods and traditional knowledge, which we've discussed about several times today, which including the production of medicinal plants, cacao, coffee, and cassava. And then finally, lessons learned in addressing climate change at different levels, including making sustainable supply chains. So this event was really considered a great success, which we've heard about, I think, today. And then CI was also able to apply lessons learned during the exchange in future project implementation. And then today, this is actually our second international exchange. And so although we would have really enjoyed being in Guyana, we are grateful that we have the technology to bring us together and share our experiences virtually. And so now I'd like to present a few lessons learned about the implementation of the project itself and the international goals. So the first is that, although we recognize that local dynamics related to smallholder-driven deforestation, either from agriculture or mining or other issues, they're really complex and unique to each place. But there has been a really great value in the project's global exchange components, because these facilitated opportunities to discover and then discuss common challenges between different areas, and then spread best practices across the project areas as well as internationally. So for example, as we've highlighted, the Peru-Guyana exchange did produce useful and really immediately applicable lessons for improving the project outcomes, as well as the dialogues at the UNFCCC convened policymakers from all regions, which helped inform both the international negotiations as well as spread best practices back to national context. The second lesson learned is that the baseline discourse analysis and some of the complementary project analyses were really important early on in the project to help guide the global policy engagement, as well as then identify key strategic partners to amplify the international objectives. But then on the other hand, although the follow-up analyses on the coordinated joint work on agriculture, they were useful to track the negotiations, but for future projects, these types of follow-up analyses could be improved to then ensure that they would have better comparison with this baseline analysis. And then finally, I would like to share some of the key lessons learned that we did garner from the international policy exchanges about some of the successful implementation of projects to address drivers of deforestation. So first, we identified some of these key issues that need to be addressed, and the idea that solutions can really be effective where there's a multi-stakeholder approach with governments, civil society, private sector, and local communities carrying out a needs assessment and then balancing needs. So, making secure land tenure arrangements, investing in productivity, diversifying livelihoods, bolstering local institutions, and then ensuring market access for agricultural commodities. Additionally, we need both incentives and disincentives. So smallholders and local communities need to have incentives at the landscape level for adoption of sustainable practices, but at the same time, there has to be disincentives to prevent expansion into forests as a strategy to obtain short-term benefits. Additionally, we know that local stakeholders must be listened to and they have to be empowered. Programs need to really be built around specific livelihood needs, as well as incorporate local knowledge, culture, and traditional practices that we know have a track record of protecting nature and boosting productivity. Additionally, governance frameworks at all levels, they need to break down silos, especially between forests and agriculture, and enable the public institutions that are really involved in local land management decisions to have more transparent processes that allow for open conversations to balance competing goals, as well as allow institutions to favor solutions that produce long-term public benefits over short-term gains. Additionally, everyone needs new skills working on these issues. So policymakers, land managers, the people in the private sector, and farmers all need coordinated training and extension programs. And really, they're really best when they foster two-way learning and promote peer exchange networks. Additionally, the global community can ramp up effort for supporting climate action in the agriculture sector and take greater co-responsibility to ensure that some of the resources, they are actually effectively reaching local communities. At the same time, the global community can enact policy reforms in their own countries to increase transparency and reduce continuing perverse incentives that are still driving deforestation. Additionally, at the international level, there needs to be a dedicated dialogue spaces on smallholder and forest issues, and these need to be really inclusive for local stakeholders. So this actually will depend on some financing and training to make sure that different stakeholders can engage at the international level. And then finally, in countries' national plans for climate action or nationally determined contributions, governments can increase the recognition that small farmers and smallholders play a dual role as both food producers and commodity producers, and they are important actors to achieve sustainable land use. So it's important to work with the local actors to create these solutions. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for this wonderful presentation today, and I hope you all have a good afternoon.
Muchas gracias, Kirisa, por tu presentación y por haber
Thank you very much, Kirisa, for your presentations and presenting the actions that are taken at international level. Now we will give the floor to Rene Edwards, who are going to give his final remarks to close this webinar. Go ahead, Rene.
Thank you, Mirko, and thank you to all of the participants today who joined us for this closing virtual workshop. It was a real pleasure for all of the teams, the team in Peru, the team here in Guyana, and for Carissa in Arlington to present the results and to share with you what went on in the project along with our project partners. We know you took time from your busy days, and we sincerely appreciate that you could have joined us today. Implementing a project like this that focuses on securing nature for people, focusing on addressing the main drivers of deforestation in two different countries, Peru and Guyana, comes with its various challenges. But it also, as you've heard, came with lots of opportunities for collaboration, for learning and sharing between the countries, between the two country teams, but also between the partners in the two countries and between the partners in the country, which we were able to experience during our visit to Peru in 2019, and which we're experiencing to some extent today. I just want to echo, I think it was a common thread throughout the day's presentations, the importance of collaboration and dialogue, the approach of joint learning and sharing, and the approach of making sure that benefits are accruing to everyone in the process. Notwithstanding all of the challenges we have in terms of implementation and the multiple objectives different people bring to the table. And I think that really underpins the whole approach to development, this landscape approach to development, and a more sustainable way of how we treat our planet and how we treat each other. Because it really has at its center this idea of mutual respect, and mutual sharing and progression together along a path. I think that was a clear message that we had today from all of the participants. Another important message is the importance of continuation and sustainability. The fact that a lot of this is one project within a larger program, within larger systems, countries, regions, and globally. And it's really important that we continue to keep the dialogue going and continue to do the work, not just at the high global level, which is obviously important for setting the framework and the incentives, but nationally and importantly, as many people said, locally in our communities, in the regions where we work, because that is where the results actually will be making a difference for local people, for indigenous people, and the improvements that could come and accrue to them and their lives. So thank you again. Thank you to all of the project teams all over. As was said earlier, it was a lot of hard work, and we really at this point really want to take a moment to appreciate the project teams and our partners, and of course, the Kingdom of Norway, who provided the support for this work. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again.
Muchas gracias, René, por tus palabras. Finalmente,
thank you, René, for your words.
Thank you.
Again, I would like to thank everybody who was involved in the project and the excellent CI team that from the different fronts and from the different offices, whether it's technical or operational in the city or in the field, contributed to have a successful initiative. Thank you very much to all participants for your attention. Now we're going to finalize this meeting, but we will be sending the answers to your questions to those who registered in the link that is in the comments. Thank you very much. See you